Well, good afternoon to you. 505 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. Ahead, we'll get into some of the ongoing files being released involving Jeffrey Epstein and all of the powerful people around him, their names all going public. We'll share with you what we know. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Joining us right now is the Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Virginia, Jason Miyares. He's on the phone. Mr. Attorney General, Happy New Year to you. Good to have you with us. Thank you.
Great to be with you. Thanks so much for having me, Vince.
We've got quite a bit going on in Virginia right now. I see that apparently this month is Human Trafficking Prevention Month, and I can't help but think of our southern border, and how much human trafficking is happening coming across it. Is that an issue in Virginia? Does that have an impact on the Commonwealth?
No doubt. Every state is becoming a border state, and what you have seen is this chaos in the border. It is human tragedy on such a large stage, but one of which is the cartels are enticing people and exploiting them, and what they do is that the going rate's roughly $15,000, and what the cartels will do is they then will tell people they have to pay off that debt, quote unquote, in the form of either sex or labor trafficking. So tragically, the cartels are absolutely engaged in it. The world's largest criminal enterprise is narcotics. After that, the second largest criminal enterprise is human trafficking. And so many of these cartels that are trafficking in narcotics, they're trafficking people. And listen, I have seen the witness interviews, and the cartel members will say, listen, with narcotics, whether it's fentanyl or heroin, you traffic in it, you get paid once, you're done. With human beings, you can be paid over and over again. And so they are definitely trafficking human beings, and human trafficking is affecting every state. It affects every community, rural, suburban, and urban. It's absolutely in Virginia, and it's something we're really trying to raise awareness that, we're having unprecedented coordination with our federal, state, and local law enforcement. But what we're trying to get the word out is private citizens are also the front line. They could be such a great ally for us, because oftentimes they are interacting with people that are the victims of trafficking, and they don't even realize it. We're trying to raise awareness of what to look for and what to do if they discover or they suspect something.
Because you'll have the stories we hear, people are trafficked and then they are working, but they're not actually working for their own benefit or for the benefit of their families. They're working to pay off their debt to the cartels, and their families' lives are on the line.
Correct. And so roughly 60% of those that are trafficked are trafficked for sex. About 40% are labor trafficking. The labor trafficking ring that was broken up in Williamsburg last year was primarily labor trafficking. They were exploiting children as young as 14, that they were working 18, 20 hours a day to, quote, pay off their debt. It's just it's such a tragic incident. And yes, every day Virginians are interacting with it, and they don't realize it's estimated, for example, over 80% of human trafficking victims have actually visited a medical provider while they're being trafficked. In other words, they're sitting next to you at a patient first or a doctor's office or at a nurse's, and they don't even realize the person sitting right there is a member of human trafficking. So it is as simple as, if you see something, say something, you hit #77 on your cell phone, you send a text message to #77 BSP, the Virginia State Police, and you give us your tip. So many of these cases start because somebody sees something, they say something, and it's a great way to get law enforcement involved. It literally could save a life.
I do know that in the United States, unfortunately, the cartels have found a foothold to establish some of their operations on this side of the border. Is it your impression that this is going on in Virginia?
Yes. I mean, the reality is Virginia, because we both have, Interstate 95 and 81. You have the D.C. metro area, which is, MS-13 is absolutely also engaged in trafficking of human beings. So you have a large metro area. If you have a large metro area, you're having instances of human trafficking. And so, if we tell our citizens, good Virginians, is lock arms with us, work with us to eradicate. If you go to a rest stop, if you go to a gas station or a truck stop, or if you're at a hotel, at an entertainment venue, what are the signs to look for? You've seen an unaccompanied minor with somebody who does not seem to be a family member. Somebody does not have any form of identification, no way of payment. A lot of these traffickers will tattoo the neck of their victims as a way to try to exert psychological control over theirs, to brand them. If you're in a neighborhood and you have an Airbnb or a VRBO and you see a steady stream of of people coming in and out of a residence on a regular basis, there's a sign that could be something where traffickers come in for a weekend or 4 or 5 days to commit a criminal enterprise. And so much of this is just people hitting #77 on their cell phone, send that text to the Virginia State Police of what you're saying. It really can make a difference, because what we realize is private citizens can be such a force multiplier for law enforcement on this front. And, I can tell you this, when you work with law enforcement, and you quickly realize there are few criminals that law enforcement loathe more than those that exploit the vulnerability of our most innocent, and particularly our children. And tragically, so many of those that are trafficked are minors.
It's crazy. It's just unbelievable what's going on. Let me move to the issue of elections now. We've got a victory for you in the past few, and the voters of Virginia, most importantly, in the past few days. I'm seeing headlines here. An appeals court has sided with you, Virginia Attorney General Miyares, in a case involving false and intimidating election flyers. Tell us about this case and what you were able to achieve.
Well, listen, I mean, we had a group that was distributing flyers, direct mailers to voters, essentially saying that if you don't vote, you run the risk of losing your Social Security income, your Medicare eligibility, your unemployment benefits, your child custody rights. And so these were falsely framed as coming from a government or a quasi-government entity. And, we in the past have dealt with groups that have sent text messages telling people the wrong place to go vote. And that's the whole reason why we have set up, and arranged our election integrity unit to tackle these issues, because we want everybody, whether you're on the left or the political right, we want everybody to have full faith and confidence in our elections. And it's our general attitude has always been, it should be easy to vote, hard to cheat. Let's make sure that we call balls and strikes, hold everybody accountable. And so, we're proud of the work that we've done to make sure that our elections are above board.
Yeah, so people were being told that they're literally going to lose their Social Security.
Right.
That's
right. It was pretty surprising, and I've seen a lot. But listen, part of our job, we issued a cease and desist. We got challenged in court. We won. I think it was a great win for democracy and clean elections.
Yeah. Well, okay. So let me project forward then to both the primary votes this year and as well as the general election this year. A lot of Virginia voters very affixed on what that'll look like. How much confidence do you have that this system will be run with integrity in the Commonwealth?
I have a high degree of confidence. We have great professionals at the Virginia Board of Elections. I think, one thing that I've been pleased at is Virginia, we largely get it right. Of course, anytime you have hundreds of thousands or several million people voting, there's always instances. You got to investigate every allegation, obviously, of fraud. But listen, Virginia, we run I think a pretty clean system, a very efficient system. I think the governor has really put a focus on a holistic approach to government, making sure that we have good customer service and really focusing on getting it right. And so far, I've been very pleased at what I have seen in Virginia, and I think we're going to continue to move forward.
Yeah. Can we get it to the place where you have to have a voter ID to vote entirely? I know that is like kind of the system in Virginia, but if you show up without an ID, they still let you cast a ballot. That kind of seems like a loophole.
Listen, there's things that they have put into place that got put into place in the North administration that are still in place, things like same-day registration voting. My attitude has always been, if it requires a library card, if it requires a photo ID to look at a library book, that should be the case. In Virginia, it makes a lot of sense. You are allowed to cast a provisional ballot right now. They no longer require some type of photo ID in place. You have to have some type of generic identification. It can be something as simple as a utility bill. But at the end of the day, it's something that should be improved. I think the great irony in all of this is the photo ID to vote is something that the members of both parties broadly support. Even the last poll I saw, so roughly 55% of Democrats, identified Democratic voters, supported a photo ID of some type of photo application to vote.
Yeah.
And it is something that the media makes it sound like it's somehow controversial. It's actually not. It's something that's broadly supported by the electorate. It makes a lot of common sense. And it's something I think that gives people confidence. That's ultimately what we want. We want everybody to be able to, whenever there's an election, that everybody feels that this is a smooth election that's been run absolutely both fairly and people have the confidence in the results.
Yeah. Well, no, for sure. I mean, I need a photo ID to get into Costco. Like, I think at this point, like, you should probably have it to vote. Finally, Jason Miyares, I do want to ask, as the Attorney General of the Commonwealth, when it comes to elections, you must be watching with some interest what's happening in Colorado and Maine. They have ejected Donald Trump from the ballots there, obviously interfering with the ballot. Are there efforts to do this in Virginia? And what's been your reaction to depriving the voters of their options?
There already was an effort in Virginia, and we already won. We already defeated it. The courts sided with us. It didn't get a lot of attention because it was right around New Year's Eve, but there was an effort. Somebody filed a petition. I think it's outrageous to remove someone from the ballot. In this case, with the Colorado Supreme Court on a 4-3 partisan decision, they essentially made a determination of something that Donald Trump hasn't not even been convicted of, to remove him from the ballot. In Maine, it was the single decision of a single elected official, the Secretary of State, who made the determination. You cannot claim you're, quote, saving America for democracy by removing somebody from the ballot. I think that the voters make these decisions. I think most Americans have wisely, I think, realized that this was abuse of power by the Colorado Supreme Court and by the Maine Secretary of State. We're going to be signing on an amicus brief on behalf of several other AGs to the U.S. Supreme Court, asking them to intervene. You need to provide clarity because I think you can see more and more states. Minnesota has rejected this notion. A lot of blue states, by the way, have already rejected the argument that Colorado advanced. It had been rejected in several states. I think the Colorado Supreme Court reached this decision. I think the Supreme Court is going to provide, I think, some clarity on this because I think it's anti-democratic what's happening right now.
Indeed. I agree with you completely. Attorney General Jason Miyares from the Commonwealth of Virginia, thank you very much for your time today, sir, as always.
Great to be with you. Thank you, Vince.
Good to talk to you. Yeah, just wild what the left is doing here, and then calling it the defense of democracy as they literally rig ballots in the United States. Yeah, I want to get to this Jeffrey Epstein thing in a moment because, the revelations, one, a lot of it is stuff we already knew, a lot of names we already knew, certainly. A little bit more detail. Of course, the big one, the Bill Clinton likes him young. What a shock. But there's also kind of the deeper story here, which is how did Epstein make all that money? And what was the operation really about? Obviously, he was getting perverse sexual gratification out of the horrific things he did to these young girls, but there's something else going on here, specifically with very powerful people, very well-connected, influential people. Not all rich, not like all billionaires, a lot of big-time politicians. Kind of fascinating. So we'll explore that coming up. In the meantime, Nikki Haley, I've got some audio of her. She was in New Hampshire last night, and she's just, what do the kids say? She's kind of cringe, honestly.
We have an opportunity to get this right, and I know we'll get it right, and I trust you. I trust every single one of you. You know how to do this. You know Iowa starts it. You know that you correct it. You know that you continue to go...
Kind of a weird strategy. You insult the voters of Iowa, right? Yeah, Iowa starts it. You correct it, she says to New Hampshire.
You know how to do this. You know Iowa starts it. You know that you correct it. You know that you continue to go... And then my sweet state of South Carolina brings it home. That's what we do. That's what we do.
All 8 people were clapping at the same time. That was amazing. And then this line really stands out to me. Is this from the same event? She said this week. It's the same event. Okay. In New Hampshire. Nikki Haley referred to illegal immigrants, and she said that you need to stop talking about them as having committed a crime. I'm sorry. What was that? They're illegal immigrants. The first act they did by entering the country was to commit a crime. So, but Nikki Haley says that that's disrespectful. She is running in the Republican primary, just to remind you.
But let's keep in mind, these people that are wanting to come here, they want to come for a better life too. They have kids too. They have a heart too. So we don't need to be disrespectful. We don't need to talk about them as criminals. They're not. They're families that want a better life, and they're desperate to get here.
Yeah, so how dare you? Don't pick on them. Don't say that they committed a crime. Even if they did, that hurts their feelings. Why would you do that? This is the type of weakness that I think most normal people are tired of, right? And they're tired of having their own decency exploited. Don't say that. It might hurt somebody's feelings. I'm sorry. I just want to get this country back on track. That's all I want. And I find that the more plain spoken I am about the problems, the more likely it is we can actually fix them, right? Rather than sitting back and being like, no crime was committed. Oh, it's fine that you're here. We'll figure it out. That's not working. That's not working. We're looking at upwards of over nearly 2 million encounters at the border last year. We have a full-blown invasion going on. And if that's not an invasion, what number would be to you? What number would be? I love the Biden White House. They're like, oh, people are seeking a better life. It's a scam. I mean, they even know it over on CBS. Tony DeCouple this morning challenging Alejandro Mayorkas, going, well, wait a second. Like, most of these people who are coming, they don't even receive asylum.
You're talking to senators in the White House about a bill on that side of the chamber. The House has already passed something. So what I'm really asking you here is, would you change the law? Do you support changes to the law to reduce the flow? And I'll give you specifics that Republicans want on the table. They want the standard for allowing a person to come across the border in between ports of entry, illegally is the word for it, and wait here. They want that standard to be higher. Right now, it's just credible fear. They want it to be more likely than not you'd be allowed to stay. I think you know the reality is most people who cross the border and claim asylum, the vast majority do not actually receive asylum.
Because it's a con, it's a scam.
And then they're just here. So will you change the standard at the border as a matter of law?
There are bipartisan negotiations ongoing now. Republican and Democratic senators are at the table to discuss how the broken immigration system should be fixed. I am privileged to be a part of those discussions and provide technical and operational advice.
They should draw up an article of impeachment for just being boring, too. Just like when you go on television, just giving mindless answers. Just add it to the pile. Coming up, some of the Epstein revelations and the deeper story on that. Hey there, good afternoon to you. It is 5:34 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Yeah, there are names popping out of people who were associated with Jeffrey Epstein, the pedophile guy. As they say, the disgraced financier is usually the euphemistic way he's referred to. And a lot of the names are names we knew. We knew that Bill Clinton was going to appear in these documents over 50 times, and sure enough, the documents are coming out, and Bill Clinton's name keeps on popping up within them. And it involves depositions where some of the victims and people associated with Epstein are laying out what they know from their perspective. And I'll quote here from, from the Daily Caller and James Lynch writing up about this. First set of court documents listing Jeffrey Epstein associates unsealed. Highly anticipated court documents containing a list of over 150 associates of deceased pedophile Jeffrey Epstein began to be released Wednesday night. Former President Bill Clinton and disgraced British Prince Andrew are named in the court documents related to Epstein associates, now made public as a part of years-long litigation between a prominent Epstein accuser, Virginia Giuffre, and Epstein's partner, Ghislaine Maxwell, who's currently serving time. Quote, I was paid for the picture with Prince Andrew with his arm around me, Ghislaine in the background. And I was paid for the print of the stories. Giuffre testified, that is. regarding her infamous picture with Prince Andrew, a partial transcript of her deposition showed. Wait a second. Why would you be paid to be in a photo with Prince Andrew? Why would that happen? Isn't that interesting? Now, I can understand. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. I can understand, but I get the idea that there are people who pay women for sex, but why are you being paid to be in a photo? Who paid you? Was it Epstein and the people around him? Epstein and people around him paid you to be in a photo with Prince Andrew? What was that about? Why would that be the case? I was paid. Additional names that appeared in the full transcript of Giuffre's deposition include billionaire Thomas Pritzker. Pritzker. That name's popping up a lot today, isn't it? The Pritzker name. Very wealthy, lefty family. They fund all sorts of left-wing causes. J.B. Pritzker is the governor of Illinois. Of course, Penny Pritzker is the head of the Harvard Corporation, which is in the midst of a scandal right now. She's the former Commerce Secretary to Barack Obama. The Pritzker, it's all over the place. Thomas Pritzker, billionaire Thomas Pritzker's name appears in this deposition. Deceased model scout Jean-Luc Brunel, deceased computer scientist Marvin Minsky, and deceased former Democratic New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson's names all appear. Giuffre and Andrew settled a lawsuit in 2022 after she accused him of raping her during his friendship with Epstein, the New York Times reported. Giuffre previously accused Clinton of traveling to Epstein's Little St. James Island, the creepy pedo island, a charge the former president has, and to this day still does, vehemently denied. When has Bill Clinton ever lied to us? He hasn't done that famously or anything. A newly released deposition from Epstein victim Johanna Schoberg contains further information about both Clinton and Prince Andrew that she was able to recall. Quote, they put the puppet on Virginia's lap, and I sat on Andrew's lap. Says this is a different woman. Johanna Schoberg. I'm probably mangling her last name, but I'll just say Johanna. So Johanna is saying, they put the puppet on Virginia's lap, referring to Virginia Giuffre, and I sat on Andrew's lap, referring to Prince Andrew. And they put the puppet hand on Virginia's breast, and Andrew put his hand on my breast, and they took a photo. Why would they take a photo? What would be the point of taking a photo of this? The puppet was a caricature of Prince Andrew, and they were staying at Epstein's Manhattan, New York townhouse. She also names deceased pop legend Michael Jackson and magician David Copperfield in her deposition. Quote, did Jeffrey ever talk to you about Bill Clinton? She responded, he said one time that Clinton likes them young, referring to girls. A separate email from Jeffrey Epstein mentions deceased physicist Stephen Hawking, known for his scientific discoveries and long battle with ALS. Epstein alludes to an allegation that Hawking participated in an underage orgy on his island in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Hawking was pictured at a barbecue on Epstein's island and taking a boat tour off of the island, the Telegraph has previously reported. The release of the court documents was initially thought to be delayed because of an appeal from a Jane Doe, but a judge confirmed yesterday, that the documents were set to be released on schedule, and sure enough, started appearing yesterday. Former President Trump is also mentioned in the Epstein document dump, but Schoberg, Joanna, said she never massaged Trump. She only recalled visiting one of his casinos. Additionally, the documents demonstrate a bunch of times witnesses were asked in these depositions about Trump, and every single time had nothing incriminating to share about Trump. Donald Trump Jr., in fact, shared this to his Instagram account overnight to emphasize the point. In fact, Trump's record with Epstein, Trump definitely did know Epstein, and he definitely was photographed with him from time to time. But Trump seems to have acquitted himself rather well in terms of the public record. He kicked him out of his club in Mar-a-Lago because he had apparently sexually harassed the daughter of one of the other members of Mar-a-Lago, and Trump gave Epstein the boot over that. Multiple people have claimed. Additionally, a lawyer representing Epstein's victims has said that Donald Trump was among the only helpful witnesses to work with him as he was trying to get to the bottom of what Epstein had done to all these girls. So that's interesting too. But let me go one step further here. You know, for years there have been these allegations about Epstein and what he was up to, and it's honestly most of it's mystery still. Like, how did he become filthy rich? Why was Leslie Wexner, the guy who ran Victoria's Secret for decades, why was he giving all this money to Epstein. What was all of that about? Epstein was apparently managing wealth or something. He was a financial advisor. How did he become so filthy rich? And the answers to those questions remain unclear. People don't quite actually know. And isn't that weird? Isn't weird? Like most rich people, you can identify, oh, this is how he got rich. And, you can tell George Soros how he got rich in currency. But Epstein, who knows everybody, all the powerful people, all the rich people, he's running around with them. He's apparently engaged in some pretty awful stuff with them, putting them in compromising photos. We don't know how he got rich. Meanwhile, there are also, there have been details throughout the years that have shown up where he has all these contacts with intel communities, whether here in the United States or overseas, that he's been linked to the intelligence community, law enforcement, FBI informant. How did that happen? And what's really happening here? Michael Schellenberger explores this today in a piece for his Substack. It's called Public. I think it's a Substack. Yeah, it's a Substack. He co-writes it with someone called Alex Gutentag, real name. Headline, Jeffrey Epstein ran sex blackmail operation for intelligence agencies. New evidence suggests. This is Schellenberger's take on the events, and certainly one of the theories that we've been hearing for years. The release of new court documents from a lawsuit related to Jeffrey Epstein yesterday provided little, if any, new fodder for conspiracy theorists who remain fixated on Mr. Epstein's dealings more than 4 years after his death, according to the New York Times. They're quoting the Times here, mocking the Times for its coverage. The documents, the Times claimed, reinforced what the public already knew, namely that pedophile financier Epstein and his associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, made young and often underage women available for sex to powerful men. In fact, the documents offer new evidence and insight into how Epstein and Maxwell appeared to be blackmailing powerful individuals, albeit to mysterious ends. Notice I kept pointing out, isn't it weird that they're photographing these guys? It wasn't just like a sexual exchange, like, oh, take some money and then you have sex with this girl. That's not exactly what it was, although it appears to have been in many cases. You've got people being photographed in these compromising positions. We talked to Alana Goodman from the Free Beacon earlier this week, and what was she? Remember, she was laying out for us that in all of Epstein's properties, they were wired for sound. They had cameras everywhere. That you couldn't walk down a hallway without having your image captured. And these people were doing all sorts of awful things in the sight of all these cameras that were controlled by Jeffrey Epstein. What did Epstein get out of those cameras? What did he use them for? They appeared to be blackmailing powerful individuals to mysterious ends, says Schellenberger. A judge ordered the release of the court documents, which were from a case brought by Epstein victim Virginia Giuffre against Maxwell in 2015. The parties settled in 2017. Maxwell is currently serving a 20-year prison sentence. It is true that some of the information released yesterday has already come to light. Last April, for example, the Wall Street Journal reported that the current director of the Central Intelligence Agency, William Burns, had scheduled 3 meetings with Epstein in 2014. Why was Burns meeting with Epstein? At the time, Burns was Deputy Secretary of State. According to the Journal, they met in Washington, D.C., and at Epstein's townhouse in Manhattan. The Journal based its reporting on Epstein's own emails and schedules. In 2019, reporter Vicky Ward for the Daily Beast wrote a story about the Justice Department's 2007 non-prosecution agreement with Epstein. Where others might have gone to prison for similar crimes, Epstein made a deal with the U.S. Attorney's Office and avoided federal prosecution for sexually abusing young girls by pleading guilty to state prostitution charges in Florida. Under this agreement, Epstein avoided a potential life sentence, and he served only 13 months in a work release program. Yeah, you remember the work release program that Epstein was on? He got to spend his weeks at home. He didn't even have to really go to jail that often. He was like, it was the Claudine Gay of jail sentences. It was not actually consequences. That same year, another of Epstein's victims alleged that he had cameras in his house to monitor people. That claim lent further credence to the theory that Epstein was collecting compromising material on influential figures. But the newly unsealed documents include powerful new evidence that Epstein and Maxwell were deliberately blackmailing people. Johanna Schoberg, another one of Epstein's victims, recounted that he and Maxwell had created a Prince Andrew puppet for Prince Andrew. They presented it to him and used it to guide him into taking sexual photos with Schoberg and Giuffre. Then they quote Sjoberg again about what they did with the puppet and Prince Andrew. Schellenberger says, it's a remarkable passage since Maxwell and Epstein appeared to be engaged in a kind of psychological operation, framing Andrew to himself as their puppet. Maxwell and Epstein apparently played it off as a joke to Andrew, and he played along, copying his puppet's behavior and groping Sjoberg. Now think about this. If someone, in this world that these people are running around in, if you knew that your powerful buddy, in this case Jeffrey Epstein, had compromising information about you, like deeply like the kind that would just, it would shatter whatever career you were operating in, lead you to complete ruin if the secrets that he was aware of became public. If you knew that about him, how desperately would you work to keep him close to you? How earnestly would you answer his phone calls? How much would you do? What would you give away to safeguard that relationship? Right? Now, it's probably for most of us, it's going to be impossible to put ourselves in their shoes, but you can see how this operation would work. So if he's got this compromising info, and you both know it, when he calls and he says, hey, what is the likeliness that this piece of legislation is going to include this detail? Can you get this in that legislation? What is that person doing? What is their schedule? And he begins asking for his intelligence gathering, in other words. This is all hypothetical on my part, but just imagine. Just asking these questions, just trying to establish, trying to influence the outcome in the lives of all these important people, whether it's getting money out of them or political goals or achieving something for some unseen financier. You know what I mean? A lot can be done here because now you have powerful people who are in a position to grab the levers of power and yank on them and direct them the way they want to, who are really slaves to this guy because he's got the keys to destroying their life. There's everything from were American intelligence agencies using this guy? How did he end up with a sweetheart deal with the United States Department of Justice for pedophilia? He was looking at a lifetime sentence if they actually genuinely charged him, but they didn't. They gave him a measly old prostitution charge, and then he served out his time at home in his cushy mansion in Florida. Please. That only happens if you have some very powerful connections. Or if somebody is looking to protect you because they've got something to lose if they don't protect you. So there's still just more mystery here. These are not answers. I mean, let's not confuse this for, oh, finally we're getting the answers. No, we're not. We're just kind of getting glimpses, right? We're nibbling at the edge. There's been these allegations as well that Epstein was connected to the Mossad, to Israeli intelligence, that he had this long relationship with Ehud Barak, the former prime minister of Israel. And again, just a lot of weird circumstances without true clarity on what he was up to. And then finally, of course, the circumstances of his death remain a complete mystery and totally unbelievable in terms of the official story. It's crazy. The cameras just all happened to be broken at the right time. Oh, there was nobody else in the cell at that moment. Oh, he strangled himself to death. And we've seen some of these pictures of what do they refer to as the ligature wounds? Like he really strangled himself to death based on the images. And the guards were all asleep at that very moment. And they falsified the documents to indicate that they had actually done their rounds. Multiple guards. Seems unbelievable to me. It seems unbelievable to me. And with that many powerful people in this guy's life, doesn't seem crazy to me to think that there were very powerful interests that were interested in getting rid of this guy. So, yeah, we're learning some things, but this is only, we're barely, I would say, I think with some confidence, we're barely scratching the surface on the Jeffrey Epstein story. More to come. All right, let's go to the phones. We're talking Jeffrey Epstein. Mike is in Sunshine. Mike, line one. Good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. Thanks for taking my call. I come at this from a particular angle. I think the unelected deep state has always attempted to maintain leverage over elected officials and power brokers. And my example is that J. Edgar Hoover was appointed FBI director by Calvin Coolidge. He died in office under Richard Nixon.
Yep.
How did he keep his job for so long?
He blackmailed a lot of people.
Yeah, and so blackmail is part and parcel to, I think, the Beltway. It is the Mossad blackmailing politicians and power brokers to Israel's benefit. That's probably another angle to this. But I truly believe the deep state has a lot of dirt, and they like to keep it on people.
Isn't it fascinating? And so Mike, you called in and you indicated when you talked to Corey a moment ago, you said that the FBI has records that they're keeping secret of Epstein.
Well, no, I believe that, wasn't there a hard drive or something
there was.
Of Epstein's?
Yeah. So when they raided his island, they raided his island. They took hard drives and computers from the island. This seems familiar. They did this with the Hunter Biden story too, remember? And then they hid the Hunter Biden laptop, pretended they had no idea. In fact, they allowed they were involved in facilitating the spread of disinformation about that. Oh, it must have been Russian disinformation. You jerks. You had the laptop the whole time. And yes, you're right. They have Epstein's computers. A lot of funny business going on. But the least you and I can do is notice it and talk about it, which is what we're doing. Hey, the great one, Mark Levin, up next right here on WMAL.